Okay, hello friends, we are back from break. In this part, we would talk about the challenges which are there when it comes to environmental ethics and philosophy. Now, it's very important to read philosophy. Why? Because philosophy provides you the ways to be able to come up with solution. So you have challenges and you have methodologies which are provided by philosophy. Put together, you can come up with solutions. Now, what could be possible challenges to environmental ethics? There are many in today's world. Say, for example, if there is a natural fire, then what do I do? Do I need to put it out? Because in one way, I can say that see, there is a natural fire. It is affecting uh, animals. Animals are dying there. There's one more thing, and that is natural fires are a methodology of nature for its own balance. So nature has its own balance. If you put your hand unnecessarily, then you would disturb the balance. So there is definitely a challenge to your mind what to do, whether to go ahead or just step back. Then there could be killing of domesticated animals, the animals who are suffering, who are not, who are disease, who have disease, or there could be other issues with them, or some people might be just interested in domesticating an animal to eat. Then, as I discussed earlier, also, if you disturb the food web or food chain, one particular species might get overpopulated. Why? Because there's no check and control. You disturb the web. So now, what to do? Whether to destroy them because you want to protect the ecosystem, or do you think that your interference is required, or ecosystem is capable of protecting itself because nature has its own ways? Then there could be other considerations also. So there could be a consideration of farmers who use slash and burn techniques. There could be a consideration of mining company which simply does open pit mining in an unspoiled area. So the point is, what is morally acceptable and where exactly we need to enter, where exactly we need to step back. Now, here it is often said that uh, it is morally wrong for human beings to pollute and destroy a part of natural environment or consume a lot of resources. But then this argument has to go on because if a particular thing is wrong, the point is whether it is wrong simply because a sustainable environment is essential for human well-being, or you want to say that this behavior is wrong because the natural environment and its various components have certain values of their own right, and these values which they have need to be protected in any case. So these questions of morality, of solutions, of futuristic view require you to investigate them with environmental ethics in mind. Now, there could be specific issues relating to a particular community, say, for example, destruction of a pond, or there could be global issues, say, for example, climate change or raising sea levels. So, we need to think about this entire relationship of human and non human components. We need to seriously start thinking about it. But then when we go ahead with this, as I explained to you earlier also, there's something called instrumental value and intrinsic value, which we need to be very careful about. So when we talk about instrumental value, I repeat, it is the value of the things as means to further a particular end. But when it comes to intrinsic value, you are talking about value of things as end in themselves. So they might be useful, they might not be useful, but they are an end in itself. Now it's very easy to understand this distinction. Then only we'll go ahead with philosophy. See, for example, a particular fruit is very important. Why? Because the bats feed on it, and if that fruit is not there, then the survival of bats is itself would become a problem. Now, this is having instrumental value. Why? Because you are a resource to something. Then, what is intrinsic value? So, even though the fruit has instrumental value because it is a resource to bats, the point is whether it has intrinsic value in itself. Now, uh, there there's not a very wide agreement on whether fruits have values by end as an end in themselves. There are a lot of theories which suggest that yes, they have a value by themselves, which means they have intrinsic value. Now we venture into philosophy. Now there are different approaches or different philosophical ways of handling the things. There's a deep ecology approach. This is a very beautiful approach. Why? Because it has a reflection of the ancient understanding of balance, which, as modern people, we have lost to much extent. Now, this approach came up why? Because in there were three people: Nice, Qualoy, and Falun. So they were basically Scandinavians, and they had great love for mountains. And when they visited Himalayas, they got very impressed by the Sherpa culture which is there in Himalayas. Now, what is this Sherpa culture and what was so significant in that? So they found that when they roamed around, uh, the Sherpa guides which who were there with them, they regarded some mountains as sacred, and these people, they were told not to venture those mountains. They are sacred mountains. They are not to be touched. Now, if you get deep into it, you would realize that these are places with very fragile ecology. So, what our forefathers did was they were uh, declared as sacred. So, you would not venture and disturb them, and that is how the entire balance would get protected. So, this reverence for a few areas in which is cultural in nature is basis of deep ecology. Now, when we read deep ecology, please don't get it confused with shallow ecology movement. Shallow ecology movement is just a fight against pollution and resource depletion. So the central objective is the health of people in developed countries. But when you read deep ecology, it is a contrast to it. So it is all about biospheric egalitarianism, which means that all living beings are alike and have a value of their own right, whether they are useful or not. So the people who follow deep ecology would respect the intrinsic value of a particular thing. So, say for example, if they are walking on mountainside, they would not cause unnecessary damage to the plants around. Now here there are two, three more very significant things which develop when it comes to deep ecology movement. There's one total field image. Now what is this total field image? It says that all the organisms should best be understood as knots in a biospherical net. So the identity of any living being is constituted by the relations to other things in the world. That is your ecological relations with other living beings. So if you conceptualize things in the world in relation terms, that is, this living being is related to this living being is related to this, then you would better take care of nature and world in general. Why? Because you would understand that you are dependent upon everything which is around. So that is total field image. Now this theory is very easy to understand if you look at the uh, food web or food chain theories. So just like we have a food web, we have a total field image. We are dependent on each other for different things. And any kind of disturbance in this web can be disastrous. Then there is identification of ecological self. So when you understand yourself as something larger than your consciousness, then you identify that there are so many boundaries which you need to understand. So that is your ecological self, to understand yourself, your own boundaries in this entire ecology. Then there is human self realization. So when you go ahead with human self realization, you would understand that you cannot be selfish when it comes to nature, and you cannot exploit nature. So you can say that an expansion of human self to include non-human nature is very important, and it has sufficient support also. So this is all about deep ecology. What is my existence as a part of this universe? What are my limitations, and what limits I should not be crossing? So all living beings are equal. That is biospheric egalitarianism. Then there is a total field image of me as a part of this biosphere. Then what is my ecological self? What are my connects with other species, other living things? That is ecological self. Then human self realization. What are my limits? That is how you understand this approach. Then there is one approach which is called as feminism and environment. It's a very interesting approach. Why? Because it says that ultimately it's all about patriarchy and how patriarchy would approach various things. So they say that male dominated culture or patriarchy is supported by four interlocking pillars. Now, what are these pillars? They are sexism, racism, class exploitation, and ecological destruction. So, these are the pillars. And they consider patriarchy as something which believes in destruction across these pillars. Now, how exactly do you relate this feminism and nature? That's a question. So, they have a very beautiful answer to this. What they say is that human exploitation of nature is a manifestation or extension of oppression of women, and it is a result of associating nature with female. So since the female is already inferiorized and oppressed by male dominating culture, because you associate nature with a woman, you try to destroy nature also. Had you understood nature to be a man, you would not have gone ahead with that kind of destruction. So they believe that it is all about the uh, patriarchy. And this approach has resulted into what is called as ecological feminism. So you understand nature as a woman, and that is the reason why there is exploitation of nature. And what are the solutions then? Then there is this enchantment and new animism. So it talks about one outer nature and one inner nature. So what is this outer nature? So according to the theorists, the outer nature is the natural environment. What you do, you keep on destroying this outer nature with the help of science and technology, and you pay price for it. Then there's one inner nature. What is this inner nature? That is human nature. So say for example human creativity or human autonomy or human needs, human vulnerabilities, human longings, all the things which are central to human life are inner nature. Now if you want to preserve this outer nature, then you better start coming up with theories to suppress this inner nature. Then only you will be able to maintain balance. Now this has resulted into what is called as ecocentric criticism. Why? Because you give a lot of focus to environment here. Then there's one more important thing, and that is uh, social ecology and uh, bioregionalism. So this approach which claims to be comparatively radical, which is social ecology approach. Now, what it says is that we should use our gift of social ability, communication, and intelligence as if we are nature rendered conscious, and we should not turn against every source or origin of the gift of nature. So that is ecological sociology, and it believes in the existence of different species in different parts of the world and significance of them. So these are different analysis of environmental ethics when it comes to